sleepy dreamer. How you doing? Tonight I'll be your guide, here to ease you into calm, restful sleep. Before we get started, remember to like the video and subscribe so you won't miss future scary bedtime stories. Share in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Also, let me know if there's a story you'd love to hear next. I never really considered how simple it might be for someone like me to vanish while doing this kind of work. Delivering meals always seemed harmless, practically safe. You drive, you drop off, you collect your pay. But that night reminded me there's a difference between imagining danger and feeling it breathing at your neck. My name is Daniel Cross. I grew up in Briarwood, a mid-sized town in western Pennsylvania, where the winters gnaw into your bones and the summers carry that faint smell of wet pavement after rain. I was 27 that September, living alone in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on Harbor Street. The place always smelled faintly of dryer sheets mixed with mildew, but it was cheap and close to everything that mattered. Supermarket, gas station, and the one bar in town worth stepping into. Before this job, I spent 4 years working in a print shop on Lincoln Avenue. I liked the steady hum of the machines and the sense of being useful, even if that usefulness meant collating tax packets or scanning endless forms. That ended the previous winter when the owner closed up shop and sold the building to a law firm from Pittsburgh. None of us were kept. I figured I'd land another office role, but nobody was hiring. Rent still needed paying, so I downloaded the QuickBite app, thinking it would just be a short-term fix. I didn't mind the strange hours. If anything, they fit me better than 9 to 5. I had always been a night person, more at ease with silent roads and the steady murmur of my car's engine than with daytime chatter. My mom used to say I was born in the wrong part of the clock, that in another life I might have been a lighthouse keeper or a late-night DJ. The evening was cool and quiet, one of those late summer nights where you can sense fall waiting at the edges, sharp and crisp. I'd been working since about 7 p.m., and by midnight the orders had slowed nearly to nothing. I was parked in my usual spot behind the abandoned pharmacy, scrolling without aim through my phone. A faint bass line from my playlist pulsed through the speakers. At 12:32 a.m., the screen lit up with a buzz. New order. Burger King on Central Avenue. Pick up now. Drop off in 15 minutes. I didn't even glance at the name, just tapped accept. The pickup was nothing unusual. The overnight crew recognized me by then. They slid over a single brown bag holding a couple burgers and a large soda. The receipt listed no odd instructions beyond keep warm. Easy money. The GPS sent me west, past the empty stretch of old timber road where streetlights grew sparse. I hummed along with the music, tapping the wheel as the app instructed me to turn onto a side street I had never driven before, Sycamore Drive. At first it looked like every other industrial road, wide lanes, power lines overhead. But the further I drove, the clearer it became this wasn't a functioning park. The buildings were aged, their signage faded beyond reading. Weeds split the pavement, crawling out of cracks. The few streetlights glowed weakly, some twitching as though seconds from dying. I slowed, expecting maybe to spot a security truck, but the entire area was empty. My headlights swept across parking lots cluttered with dead leaves, abandoned carts, and the occasional broken desk dumped beside a loading dock. The GPS chimed, 300 feet, turn left. I turned into a small lot behind a one-story brick building. The pavement was rough, patched unevenly, like it hadn't been touched in years. The building bore no front sign, just stretches of blank brick and several unmarked steel doors. My phone buzzed with a text. Customer. Yeah, I see you. Bring it to the gray metal door on your left. I looked. Sure enough, one plain gray door stood there. No windows, no sign, only a handle reflecting the street lamp's glow. I picked up the bag and stepped into the still night. Gravel popped under my sneakers. As I approached, another message arrived. Customer. You can just bring it inside for me. I paused. The company discouraged stepping indoors, but plenty of night shift workers asked for it, usually guards or clerks wanting food at their station. I pushed the handle. The door groaned as it opened. Inside was a narrow hall lit by weak yellow bulbs spaced far apart. The air was stale, tinged with metal, maybe rusted pipes. I stepped inside and let the door fall closed. I walked forward, expecting a counter or lobby. Instead, the hall stretched into darkness. No voices, no sound. Then I heard it. Click. The sound came from behind. I spun. The gray door was shut. I tried the handle. Locked. Hello? My voice echoed thinly. Nothing. A cold weight settled in my stomach. I pounded on the metal. Hey, I think you locked me in. No reply. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared down the hall, the bag of food heavy in my hand. I dropped it, the paper crumpling against the tiles. From deeper inside came the creak of a door, slow, deliberate, then shut. Someone else was here. I moved quickly, forcing silence. The hall ended at another door, leading into a second corridor lined with small, dark offices. Every doorway was just a black square, some with blinds drawn, others open to deeper shadow. Footsteps echoed from the far end, quick and steady, moving closer. I slipped into the nearest office, crouching behind a dusty desk. The smell of old paper filled my nose. My breathing sounded too loud. The steps reached where I had entered, then stopped. Silence. A faint shift, like someone adjusting weight. Then the steps turned, retreating the way they came. I waited, counting to 30 before slipping out in the opposite direction. The hall curved, ending at a set of double doors marked by a flickering exit sign. My hands shook as I shoved them open. Cold air hit me. I ran across the lot to my car, fumbling the lock with trembling hands, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Inside, I slammed the locks and started the engine, pulling away fast. My phone buzzed again in the cup holder. Another message from the customer. I didn't look. Once I reached the main road, I dialed 911. My voice shook as I explained. The dispatcher was calm, promised an officer. Nearly 20 minutes passed before the cruiser rolled into Sycamore Drive. The lot stood empty. The officer searched the building and returned shaking his head. Nobody there. He told me the place had been abandoned for at least 5 years. No power, no cameras, nothing but emergency lights. I asked him what had just happened, but he couldn't answer. He took my statement, gave me a case number and warned me to stay alert on future runs. Driving home, every shadow along the road seemed to lean heavier. I kept checking my mirror, waiting for headlights to appear. None did. I still don't know who shut that door or what they wanted me inside for. But some nights, lying awake, I think about how near those footsteps came and what might have happened if I hadn't moved when I did. I was 26 when I began taking shifts at Pinecrest Pizza, a modest shop on the outskirts of Marlow, a faded New England town that always felt quieter than it should. I wasn't in it for a long-term career. I already had a stable job during the day at a local coffee shop, but the evenings dragged on in silence. My girlfriend had moved 2 states away for grad school, and most of my friends had settled into marriages and kids. After dark, the apartment felt like a padded box. Delivery work gave me an excuse to leave the house, even if it only added a few extra dollars in tips. I enjoyed the simple rhythm of it. Grab the bag, slide into the car, cruise down calm streets with the radio turned low. There was something almost soothing about the routine, though I knew one wrong address or one bad customer could change that in a second. Other drivers had told stories, locked gates, odd customers, addresses that didn't exist. I thought I'd learned enough to spot trouble before it reached me. That night was a Tuesday in early October, cool enough that the maples had started losing their leaves. We'd had a small dinner rush, but by 9 o'clock things slowed nearly to nothing. I leaned against the steel counter, half paying attention to the dishwasher's playlist, when the receipt printer began spitting out an order. "This one's yours, Evan," my manager, Joel, said without glancing away from the register. I tore the slip free and read it over. 2 large pepperonis, extra garlic knots, paid ahead, cash tip included. The name listed was Walter Kane. Address, 47 Ash Hollow Road. The street name snagged in my head. It wasn't on the usual routes. Definitely not part of downtown or the newer subdivisions near the high school. Ash Hollow. That's out past the mill, right? I asked. Joel shrugged. Yeah, sort of. Pretty sure it's beyond the last of the lights. Straight shot down County 9, then cut into the woods. Old place somewhere out there. I packed up the order and checked the clock. 9:09 p.m. If I left right away, I'd make it by 9:25. A bit farther than I liked for a late run, but I'd had worse. The first stretch outside town was routine. Gas station lot half lit and empty, the thrift shop's neon sign already dark, green reflective markers flashing past. Then the road tightened, the shoulders thinned, and the glow of town faded. County 9 wasn't much of a highway, just a 2-lane strip weaving through heavy woods, straight as a line for long stretches, bending where the trees pressed in close enough to form a tunnel. 15 minutes later, my GPS chimed. Destination is on the right. I slowed, squinting into the black. The roadside looked the same in both directions. Dense trunks, tangled brush, no mailbox, no driveway, no hint of a house. I rolled past the pin and stopped on the dirt shoulder. My headlights caught nothing but saplings and thickets. Frowning, I rechecked the GPS, then tried Google Maps. Same spot. This was it. I figured maybe the place sat far back, hidden by trees with a long driveway. I rolled the window down, but the air carried nothing. No dogs, no porch hum, not even a breeze. I dialed the number on the receipt. After 2 rings, a man answered, his voice low and scratchy. "Yeah," I cleared my throat. "Hey, this is Evan from Pinecrest. I'm out here with your food, but I'm not seeing a driveway. GPS says I'm here." Silence. "Sounds like you're in the right place." I looked again at the forest. "Right, but I don't see a road." "It's there," he said. "Narrow. Can't see it from your car. You'll need to get out and check. Across from a utility pole with a red stripe." I leaned forward. Sure enough, about 30 feet ahead was a crooked wooden pole with a faded red slash. "Yeah, I see it," I said slowly. "Good," he replied. "Once you're out, you'll spot the trail. Just follow it in. I'll meet you halfway." That gave me pause. Customers usually came to their porch, maybe the yard, not halfway down a path into dark woods. Before I could respond, I saw a faint glow deeper among the trees, like a weak flashlight, though softer, almost like a lantern. It flickered once, then went dark. I hesitated. "Was that you with the light?" I asked. "What light?" His tone was flat. Then the line clicked dead. I stared at my phone, then back into the trees. Another dim glow appeared farther in, maybe 50 yards. It shifted slightly, as though someone had moved their stance, then blinked out again. A sharp chill crept across my neck. If that was the customer, why not step out to the road? And if it wasn't, then who was waiting in the dark? I stepped out, leaving the door wide. The air here was colder, damp with moss. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I circled for the pizza bags. That's when I saw the path. It wasn't a driveway. It was hardly a trail at all. Just a thin strip of dirt, uneven, like something dragged through leaves. No tire marks, no signs of use. From inside that shadowed tangle, leaves stirred, not from wind, but steady, deliberate motion. My chest tightened. This wasn't right. I set the food bag at the edge of the road and called toward the trees. "Orders here." Silence. The rustling quickened. Every instinct screamed. I dove back into the driver's seat, tossed my phone onto the dash, slammed the door. My headlights caught nothing but leaves shimmering. As I sped off, I caught one last glimpse in the mirror. Just a flicker, less than a second, but enough to lock my grip on the wheel. A man stood at the tree line, unmoving, not waving, just watching. I couldn't make out his face, but the glow I'd seen earlier burned faintly in his hand, a weak orange light, old-fashioned lantern-like. When I returned, I told Joel only that the guy never showed, so I left the order roadside. But that drive home clung to me, the empty stretches making me check the mirrors again and again. I still don't know what really happened out there, or why anyone would order food to the middle of the woods. Maybe the answer is something I'm better off not knowing. I never truly realized how much faith we place in complete strangers until that particular night. At the time, I was 26, living alone in a modest rental house on the outskirts of Fairgrove, North Carolina. The neighborhood wasn't exactly rundown, but it carried a worn-out look. The lawns were narrow, the street lamps gave off a dull glow, and most of the houses had that boxy, dated design from the late 1970s. It wasn't the sort of place where you felt at ease leaving your door unlocked. I'd been living there for about a year after ending a long-term relationship, trying to reorient myself while handling independence again. During the weekdays, I worked as a receptionist at a dental practice. It wasn't anything impressive, but it covered the rent and bills. My social life, however, was nearly non-existent. Most evenings were spent in solitude. I'd come home, kick off my shoes, throw on pajama pants, and sink into something mindless on Netflix while scrolling my phone. That Friday night was shaping up to be the same, except for one small difference. I didn't want to cook. It had been an exhausting day spent juggling irritable patients and even more irritable dentists. Comfort food was all I craved. Around 7 p.m. I picked up my phone and ordered a pepperoni pizza from a small local joint named Angelo's Slices. I didn't order from them often, usually sticking to the bigger delivery apps, but Angelo's had this buttery crust that seemed brushed with garlic oil and dusted with something close to magic. To my surprise, the driver arrived barely 15 minutes later. When I opened the door, I was greeted by a shorter man, mid-30s, with lank, unwashed black hair that hung against his face. He wore a faded red Angelo's Slices polo shirt and carried a worn black delivery bag on his shoulder. The name tag on his chest read Mason, a name I didn't recognize. "Large pepperoni, extra cheese?" he asked. "That's me," I said, handing him the cash I had prepared. He passed me the pizza and the change with minimal chatter. For a moment, though, his eyes lingered on me, observing rather than simply glancing. It was brief, so I ignored it. "Have a good night," I told him. "You too," he replied flatly, before heading toward a battered blue sedan waiting at the curb. Nothing about the interaction felt dangerous. If anything, it was strikingly ordinary. I went back inside, placed the pizza on the coffee table, and settled into my usual routine, greasy slices and background television noise. The night stretched on. Darkness had long swallowed the neighborhood. I'd eaten far too many slices, exchanged a few texts with my sister, and around 11 p.m., heavy yawns made me think about calling it a night. That's when the knock came at the door. At first, I froze, not from fear but from confusion. No one knocks on my door that late. I didn't have friends who dropped by unexpectedly, and I wasn't waiting for a package. I moved toward the living room window instead of the door and parted the blinds slightly. My stomach lurched. It was Mason, the delivery guy from earlier. Only this time he wasn't wearing the Angelo's polo. He now had on a dark jacket and jeans, standing beneath my porch light with his hands shoved into his pockets. I stared only a few seconds before his eyes locked directly with mine through the glass. The suddenness of being caught made me step back instinctively. My chest thundered like a drum. He knocked again, this time louder. I stayed frozen, barely daring to breathe. Something about the way he stood there, as if entitled to be on my porch, felt unsettling to the core. I decided to keep the door bolted, and instead tried speaking through the living room window. It was one of those older designs with a sliding pane, and only a mesh screen separating indoors from outside. I carefully unlocked it, lifted it just slightly, and asked, "Did I forget something?" He didn't respond. Instead, he slowly turned and walked toward the window. My pulse skyrocketed. I slammed it shut before he reached me, locking it fast. He stopped a few feet from the glass, raised his hand in a slow beckoning gesture, urging me to reopen it. His face was blank, devoid of emotion, and that lack of expression was somehow more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "No," I said firmly, shaking my head. For a moment, he just stood motionless. Then, without a sound, he turned, stepped off the porch, and disappeared down my driveway. Relief washed over me, but it was brief. I headed to my bedroom, convinced it was over, when my phone began to ring on the nightstand. Unknown number. I ignored it, but a voicemail notification popped up instantly. When I played it, the voice was unmistakable. Low, steady, deliberate. A man's voice. "I'm outside. If you don't let me in, I'm going to break in." The words hit me like ice water down my spine. My hands trembled as I immediately hit callback. He picked up instantly. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice quivering. "Let me in," he replied. "Why?" "Just do it." Then he hung up. That was enough for me. I dialed 911, whispering frantically to the dispatcher what was happening. They instructed me to remain somewhere secure and avoid confronting him. I grabbed my charger, retreated to the bathroom, and locked the door tight. Perched on the tub's edge, I could hear only my own ragged breathing. I strained for sounds outside, footsteps, breaking glass. But all I caught was the constant whir of the bathroom fan. Time dragged, each minute stretching endlessly. Every creak of settling wood or rustle of leaves felt like an imminent threat. Finally, flashing red and blue lights painted the frosted bathroom window. I stayed put until a police officer called my name. Only then did I unlock the door and step out. I told them everything. The delivery, the second knock, the phone calls. They wrote down my statement carefully. The good news was he had vanished by the time they arrived. The better news was that I'd given them his name from the receipt, his description, and even the number he had called from. They assured me they'd track him down. I never saw or heard from Mason again, but now every time I order takeout, I make sure every lock is secured before I take a single bite. Delivering food at night is usually calm. The roads stay empty, there's no traffic, and it's just moving from one house to the next with bags of burgers or boxes of pizza while music or a podcast plays through the speakers. I've always liked it that way, kind of meditative, just me, the open dark streets and my own thoughts. But that night carried a different feeling, and not the kind you want. It was late, probably close to 11 p.m., and I'd been out driving for hours already. I only had a single order left before calling it quits. It wasn't supposed to be complicated, just another delivery in some quiet, far-out spot along the edge of town. You know the type, Long stretches of road with hardly any houses, no sidewalks, and not a single working street lamp. The order was simple: a pizza with a soda. I picked it up from the shop, tossed the bag onto the passenger seat, and typed the address into my GPS. It was about a 15-minute drive. I figured I'd drop it off, maybe score a decent tip, and then head back home. As I drove, the city thinned behind me. The noise replaced with silence. The air was crisp, the sky black and scattered with faint stars. The only sounds were the steady rumble of the engine and the occasional hiss of leaves when the wind cut through the trees. The further I went, the emptier the route became, the homes shrinking in number until there were none. Normally I liked that, being alone out here. But that night, something about the stillness gnawed at me. I was maybe 5 minutes in when I spotted a car behind me. It wasn't tailgating, it kept a careful space. Still, the headlights burned in my rearview mirror, and I didn't like it. The road ahead stretched open and empty, but the glow behind me remained. It was strange seeing anyone out here this late. I tried brushing it off. Lots of people drive around at night. Maybe they were just going the same way. I kept on, but the car never passed me. It held that exact same distance, not close enough to be aggressive, but never falling away either. I kept waiting for them to go around me, but they never did, hanging back like a shadow that wouldn't leave. The GPS said 10 minutes left. I told myself I could handle 10 more minutes of this, except as time ticked down, the unease only grew. No matter how I adjusted my speed, that vehicle stayed with me, locked step for step. I tried reasoning with myself again. Maybe they lived out here? Maybe they were just heading home too. But the feeling in my gut didn't buy it. I turned off onto a smaller 2-lane road. No shoulder, twisting down into dips and back up, with woods pressing tight on both sides. The kind of road where it feels like no one else exists, except the headlights still glowed behind me, steady and persistent. That's when instinct hit me hard. Something was wrong. The GPS read 5 minutes remaining. Just 5 more. I took another turn, this one onto a narrow, dim stretch where the trees crowded overhead like a tunnel. The car took the same turn, and now I couldn't shake it. No way it was coincidence anymore. I wasn't even sure if this road led anywhere else. I pressed down on the gas, trying to open some distance, but the car did the same, closing in. That was it. No more excuses. I was being followed. My chest pounded. What did they want? Were they going to rob me? Was it some lunatic screwing with me? I couldn't just keep leading them forward, and there was no chance I was taking them to the customer's door. Up ahead, I spotted a dirt trail splitting from the road. I didn't know where it led, but I didn't care. I jerked the wheel hard, tires spitting gravel, dust billowing as I shot down the path. For a moment, the headlights vanished around the curve. Relief flashed through me until they came back. The car had turned too, bouncing over the uneven ground in pursuit. I cursed under my breath, gripping the wheel tighter. The road wound tighter, narrower, deeper into the woods. I didn't know where I was anymore, only that the car was drawing closer. The glare behind me grew brighter, pressing at my nerves. I tried forcing myself calm to focus on steering, but fear was clawing up fast. Branches scraped the side of my car as the dirt crunched beneath the wheels. The path suddenly forked. No time to think. I veered left, hoping it would take me anywhere but here. The car went right. For a split second, I was confused. Why hadn't they followed me? Then it clicked. They knew the back roads better. They weren't chasing. They were cutting me off. The realization slammed into me. They were circling ahead to trap me. My heart roared in my ears as I floored the gas, pushing the car until it rattled. The trail tore forward, twisting hard, rocks and ruts shaking the frame. I needed the main road again, needed out before they intercepted me. The trees started thinning, the path straightening, a glimpse of escape opening ahead. But as I broke through, my relief died in an instant. The car was already there, parked sideways across the road, blocking me. Its headlights were off, its body just a black outline in the darkness. They had beaten me to it. I slammed the brakes, tires screaming until I skidded to a stop only feet from them. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as my brain scrambled. I couldn't turn around. The path was too tight, and they'd catch me instantly. The other vehicle sat there, silent, windows dark, impossible to see who waited inside. Then the driver's door creaked open. Panic surged through me. I slammed the gear shift into reverse, flooring the gas, flying backward as fast as I dared without flipping. The other car didn't budge, but I could feel the weight of whatever was about to happen, the tension sharp enough to snap. I didn't care what road I was on or where it took me. I just had to get away. My car jolted violently as I tore backward over the ruts, refusing to look back, refusing to stop. The sound of an engine revved somewhere behind me, but I pressed on. After what felt like forever, the woods broke open. Asphalt appeared beneath my tires. I shot onto the main road, screeching as I merged. I didn't ease off the pedal until I was miles away, the forest swallowed in the rear view. I never did learn who was in that car or what they wanted. Maybe they were just trying to terrify me, or maybe it was something much darker. I wasn't going to find out. I just drove until the town lights returned, making me feel like I'd finally escaped. But even now, whenever I'm out late on those empty country roads, I can't help but check the mirror again and again, waiting for the glow of headlights creeping up behind me. Because out there in the dark, you never really know who's following or why. I'd been doing food runs for a while, and most of the time it was boring in the best way possible. You just fall into a routine, driving from place to place, and the hours fade without much to remember. But there was this one night, one trip in particular, that still lingers with me. Things had been slow and I was ready to clock out when a last-minute order came through. The drop-off was way out on the edge of nowhere, one of those spots you wouldn't think was part of town at all. Normally at the tail end of a shift I'd skip it. But the pay looked good, and I convinced myself it'd be quick. That was mistake number one. I grabbed the bag from a fast food place I'd stopped at countless times before. The same old drill. Pick up, punch in the address, and head out. The location didn't sound familiar, but I assumed it was just another house tucked off in some forgotten corner. At first, the drive was nothing unusual. Street lights, a few cars scattered here and there, the main stretch of road humming along. But the deeper I went, the more it felt like I'd crossed out of the city completely. Soon I was on a narrow path that felt suffocating, trees pressing in tight on both sides. My headlights carved through endless blackness, the forest swallowing up everything else. No traffic, no houses, just that uneasy thought that I was steering into nowhere. The GPS insisted I was close, so I forced myself to push down the creeping unease. After about 15 minutes twisting through those roads, the house finally appeared. It stood by itself, tucked at the end of a gravel drive choked by trees. Small, 2 stories but skinny, paint flaking off in strips. A dim porch light, more yellow than anything else, barely managed to touch the steps. No vehicles outside, no glow through the windows. The whole place radiated abandonment, like it hadn't been lived in for years. I parked, kept the engine humming, and grabbed the food. The silence was absolute, broken only by the crunch of stone beneath my shoes. Not even a wind stirred. When I reached the porch, I knocked. Nothing. Tried again, louder. Still dead quiet. I checked the app, confirmed the right place, then knocked a third time and waited. That's when I noticed it. The front door wasn't latched. It was cracked open just slightly, like someone had left it that way on purpose. Not wide enough to see in, but just enough to twist my stomach. I lingered, debating. Should I just leave the food and go? Hanging around didn't feel smart, but something about that half-open door pulled at me, wrong in a way I couldn't shake. It felt like eyes were on me, though I hadn't seen a soul. I gave one more knock, called out, "Your order's here," but my voice felt too loud in the still air. Silence answered back. Finally, I crouched, set the bag on the mat, and turned to head off. But for some reason, I glanced over my shoulder. The door had shifted. Open wider now, just enough to show the faint glow of a hallway. Faded wallpaper peeling from the walls, and a coat hanging neatly on a hook. Too clean, too carefully placed for a house that looked like it was falling apart. My gut screamed at me to back off. As I stepped away, I thought I saw something twitch in the dark beyond the doorway, just beyond sight. I froze, staring at that spot, unsure if it was real. My nerves were shot. The whole place was pressing in on me. I forced myself back toward the car. My hand was on the handle when a sound broke behind me, a long creak. I spun, and the front door was fully open now, wide like it was daring me inside. The food still sat untouched, but the hall looked darker, more menacing in the glow of the porch light. Every horror film I'd ever seen screamed at me not to cross that threshold. Still, I couldn't just leave. Was someone messing with me? Or was there actually somebody in there? I edged closer, eyes straining for movement. The coat still hung there, absurdly tidy in the middle of rot. Then came another noise, slow, deliberate creaks, footsteps from deeper inside, old wood groaning under weight. That was enough. I eased back, slow and careful, trying not to stir the silence. My heart hammered in my throat. Then I heard them footsteps again, But this time not from inside. They followed me, coming from the porch itself, pressing down each step. I bolted, yanking the door shut behind me, slamming the locks down and throwing the car into gear. I reversed out in a cloud of gravel, flying down that driveway as fast as I could. On the road, I caught the house in my mirror, fading behind the trees. The door still gaped open, and now someone was standing there, a figure motionless watching me. I tore down those winding roads, but it felt like they stretched, lengthened, trying to trap me. The darkness was thicker, heavier. Shadows seemed to press close against the glass. Finally, I burst onto the highway, and relief hit me like air after drowning. I sped until I found a gas station, finally pulling in, my hands trembling as I tried to breathe. That's when I noticed the buzzing in my pocket. My phone. Notifications. I pulled it out, and there it was. Order canceled. After all of that, canceled. I stared, stunned, checked the app again. No name, no address, no trace that it had ever existed, like it had been erased. I sat there debating going back, demanding answers. But the memory of that house, the cracked door, the shifting shadows, the figure in the doorway pinned me in place. I never returned. I couldn't. I drove home that night still trying to piece it together, but the puzzle refused to make sense. Who placed that order? Why leave the door like that? And who, or what, had been standing there watching me go? To this day, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to. All I know is whatever was waiting inside that house wanted me to step in, and thank God I never did.